under the high domed ceiling of the Rayburn hearing room. The air hung heavy, thick with anticipation and the faint murmur of reporters and aides shifting in their seats. The sunlight pouring through the east-facing windows refracted through. Tall glass panels, casting sharp lines across the chamber floor. Somewhere behind the wood-paneled dais, a marble clock ticked with unsettling clarity. Congressman Ron DeSantis adjusted his cuffs and leaned into the microphone. "This committee," he began, his voice deliberately slow and composed, "convenes today under its constitutional mandate to investigate national security breaches and the erosion of judicial accountability." He paused, letting the silence wrap around the word erosion like smoke. On the opposite side of the chamber, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat stone still. She wore a deep navy blazer over an ivory blouse, the only color on her a slim gold pin shaped like the scales of justice. Her eyes scanned the dais not nervously, but methodically, landing on DeSantis, who allowed a practiced smile to slip onto his face as he shuffled a stack of printed statements. Jasmine felt it in her gut. This wasn't about judicial accountability. This was about control. The room was packed, a televised spectacle cloaked in legal jargon. Reporters leaned forward in anticipation. Committee members whispered behind thin folders. A few interns fresh from elite universities typed notes on MacBooks, unaware that history might just be assembling itself in front of them. Jasmine had been in plenty of hearings, but this one hummed with something different. The silence wasn't. Neutral, it was calculated. "Congresswoman Crockett," DeSantis finally said, looking directly at her, "you have been asked to appear before this body to clarify your involvement in events that may have compromised our national integrity." No greeting, no due process language. Just that. Jasmine leaned slightly forward, folding her hands. "And which specific events, Mr. Chairman, are you referring to?" There was a flicker of discomfort among the members. DeSantis ignored it. "We'll get to that," he replied. The camera lights buzzed overhead. The show had begun. From her seat, Jasmine could feel every eye on her, not just the room's, but the nation's, and while most came to destroy her credibility, she had come to dismantle something far older, far more dangerous. The illusion that justice was blind. She looked over at her attorney, Arjun Mehta, a quiet figure with sharp eyes and an impeccable record in civil rights litigation. He gave a slight nod. He could feel it too, Doc. This was never just a hearing. It was a reckoning in disguise. The room's tension thickened as Ron DeSantis rose, papers in hand, and paced slowly along the committee dais like a general preparing his troops. His voice, calm but edged with steel, filled the chamber. "Over the past year," he began, "our nation has witnessed a troubling pattern, unauthorized disclosures of sensitive information aimed not at protecting the public, but manipulating the narrative to serve partisan interests." He glanced sharply at Jasmine Crockett, who sat unmoved, her posture a steady anchor amidst the storm. "This committee has reason to believe that certain members of Congress, emboldened by political ambition, have crossed the line, risking national security to advance personal agendas." Whispers rippled across the room. The accusation was clear even without a name. Jasmine DeSantis' eyes locked with hers as he continued. "While I will not name names at this juncture, it is imperative we establish accountability. No one is above the law." Jasmine's lips pressed into a thin line. She sat silently, watching as DeSantis painted a picture of betrayal and recklessness, one designed to isolate and intimidate her. Arjun leaned close, whispering, "They're setting the stage for a show trial. Your dissent is a threat to their control." But Jasmine's reply was a quiet smile, a flicker of defiance. "Let them try. The truth is a weapon they underestimate." The media cameras caught every moment, the broadcast cutting swiftly between DeSantis' measured aggression and Jasmine's calm resolve. Her past statements opposing aggressive surveillance and unchecked government power had made her a target, but her silence now spoke volumes. Not submission, but resistance. The hearing's first volley had been fired. The battle lines were drawn. DeSantis sat back down, confident the first blow had landed, but Jasmine was not shaken. Instead, the challenge only sharpened her resolve. Behind her calm exterior, a fire burned, a conviction that this hearing would not end as DeSantis hoped. The courtroom was no longer a venue for justice. It was a battleground of wills, and Jasmine Crockett was ready to fight. The hearing adjourned for a brief recess, but the tension spilled out into the marble hallways like wildfire. Reporters clustered beneath towering columns, their voices a low hum of speculation and leaked information. Behind the scenes, whispers passed between aides and political operatives, each word weighted with unspoken intent. A young journalist leaned close to a seasoned insider, his voice barely a whisper. Word is, Jasmine's not just the focus. For national security concerns, there's a memo floating around calls her a disruptive national influence. Across the hall, Jasmine stood alone near the windows, the city skyline a jagged silhouette behind her. A White House aide approached quietly, slipping a folded note into her hand. His eyes betrayed a conflicted warning. This isn't about justice, he said low. It's about shutting you down. They want you silenced. Jasmine unfolded the note, a stark directive outlining a strategy to undermine her credibility, to intimidate her into submission. Her jaw tightened, but her eyes softened with resolve. She didn't flinch. Instead, she did what she always did, turned inward, seeking strength in the ideals she had sworn to defend. That evening, back in her hotel room, Jasmine sat by the window with the city's pulse glowing below. She pulled out a worn copy of the Constitution, running her fingers over the delicate print. She read aloud, her voice steady and clear. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Her voice grew stronger with each word, the oath anchoring her soul. This wasn't just a fight for herself, it was a fight for the soul of the nation, for the very principles that democracy depended on. She wasn't just defending her record. She was preparing to challenge the entire system. The hearing would continue tomorrow. But Jasmine's mind was already several moves ahead. The game was no longer political theater. It was a reckoning, and she would be ready. The hearing reconvened. Under a colder light, DeSantis, having sharpened his focus overnight, wasted no time invoking a rarely used but formidable parliamentary weapon, Rule 13. With a pointed glance at Jasmine Crockett, he declared, "To maintain order and relevance, the committee will limit Ms. Crockett's responses to direct yes or no answers with no elaboration allowed." A ripple of surprise ran through the room. Some members exchanged uneasy glances. Arjunetta's eyes narrowed in protest. Rising swiftly, he challenged the chair's authority. "Mr. Chairman, such a restriction undermines the fundamental right of due process and fair representation. This committee must not become a courtroom of shadows." DeSantis's smile was thin, almost predatory. "Objection noted, Counselor. However, this committee's prerogative is to preserve efficiency and focus." Jasmine finally rose, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "Are you asking questions or delivering a verdict you wrote before I walked in?" The room went silent. The words hung heavy, a silent rebuke to the political theater unfolding. For the first time, Jasmine's posture shifted from measured compliance to poised confrontation. Behind the scenes, whispers of escalating tactics rippled through committee staff. Orders were discreetly passed down to comb through Jasmine's history with renewed vigor, searching for any detail real or manufactured that could be weaponized. DeSantis watched with thinly veiled satisfaction as the room settled into a tense quiet. But Jasmine's gaze never wavered. She understood the rules had changed. The game was no longer about facts or law. It was about power, yet, in that charged silence, a single truth glimmered. You cannot intimidate what refuses to be broken. Outside the marble courthouse, the world erupted. The hearing, once a confined political event, had spilled into the sprawling digital agora of social media and 24-hour news cycles. Clips of DeSantis cutting off Jasmine Crockett's measured replies flooded Twitter feeds, sparking outrage. And support in equal measure, the hashtags exploded overnight. Hashtag "Shut Her Down" trended among conservative circles, accusing Jasmine of obstruction, while hashtag "Let Jasmine Speak" became a rallying cry for civil liberties. Advocates and young voters hungry for integrity. Cable news pundits tore the hearing apart in heated panels. Fox News framed DeSantis as the bastion of national security, while MSNBC painted Jasmine as a courageous whistleblower, caught in the gears of a partisan machine. In the eye of this storm, Jasmine gave a rare interview to an independent journalist known for balanced reporting. In a quiet studio, far from the theatrics of the hearing room, she spoke softly but resolutely. "I don't perform rage to win headlines," she said, her hands folded in her lap. "I clarify truth, and sometimes that truth disrupts the comfortable illusions people cling to." Her words, stripped of theatrics, struck a chord. The viral remix videos, set to music and layered with poignant clips of her constitutional quotations, spread across platforms like wildfire. Meanwhile, an anonymous whistleblower within the committee leaked an internal email to a major news outlet. Subtle but unmistakable sign that not everyone inside was aligned with the chair's agenda. The leak suggested deeper fractures within the institution. Back at the hearing, Jasmine's composure was unshaken by the media maelstrom. She knew the real battle was only just beginning. Late one evening, just as the city's skyline dimmed under the weight of twilight, Arjun Mehta sat alone in the modest conference room adjoining Jasmine's temporary office. The hum of the overhead fluorescent light filled the silence as he opened an unmarked envelope that had arrived earlier that day, its edges worn, its origin untraceable. Inside lay a thick binder of internal communications between Homeland Security officials and DeSantis's committee aides. The documents detailed a chilling blueprint, plans to corner Jasmine Crockett with false accusations, to erode her credibility piece by piece, and to orchestrate a narrative that would ensure her public vilification. Arjun's fingers trembled as he flipped through pages of emails, meeting notes, and strategic memos. The scope of the conspiracy was breathtaking, an institutional trap set with cold precision. Yet the language was clinical, almost bureaucratic, as if plotting injustice were simply another administrative task. He wanted to take the binder straight to the press, to expose the manipulation and corruption. But Jasmine's voice echoed in his mind. "Let them finish building the trap," she had said the night before. "Then we'll show who holds the key." She was patient, strategic. She understood that premature exposure risked the entire operation, giving their enemies the chance to cover their tracks or discredit the evidence. The courtroom had become a pressure cooker, the heat intensifying with each passing hour. Outside, the political and media storm was relentless, but inside, Jasmine and Arjun prepared quietly, methodically, for the moment when the scales of power might finally tip. Arjun closed the binder with a resolute snap. The battle was no longer abstract, it was personal, it was political. And it was far from over. The room emptied for a recess, the clatter of chairs and murmurs fading into the marble halls where power whispered behind closed doors. Jasmine was escorted quietly to a small anteroom just off the main chamber, where a senior senator known for his moderate stance and penchant for caution waited. He leaned in, his voice low but urgent. "Congresswoman Crockett, I urge you to reconsider your approach. The current trajectory is too volatile. De-escalate. Let the process take its course." Jasmine's gaze didn't waver. Her lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. "Power," she said softly, "doesn't scare me. What frightens me is power masquerading as justice." The senator sighed, a mix of frustration and begrudging respect. He left her standing alone in the dim corridor, the echoes of his footsteps swallowed by the vast building. The next morning, Jasmine returned to the hearing chamber, transformed not in words but in presence. Her hair was braided tight, a silent homage to the suffragettes and civil rights warriors who had worn their own armor of dignity and defiance. Clad in crisp white, she carried not just a case but a legacy. As she stepped through the doorway, the collective breath of the room seemed to hitch. Reporters whispered. Committee members straightened. The atmosphere shifted. Something was breaking loose. She was no longer just a defendant in a political trial. She was a symbol. And the tide was turning. The committee room hummed with an electric tension as Ron DeSantis leaned forward, voice sharpened with calculated accusation. "Congresswoman Crockett, it has come to our attention that you met privately with a foreign journalist shortly before a sensitive leak was made public. Can you explain your involvement in this matter?" The question was loaded, the implication clear. A few committee members exchanged glances, some leaning in. Anticipating her stumble, Jasmine met DeSantis's gaze, unflinching. The room seemed to contract around her, the murmurs fading into a heavy silence. She took a slow breath before replying, her voice steady and piercing. "The only thing I've ever leaked is truth." Some men confuse that with betrayal. The words sliced through the room like a sharpened blade, leaving stunned faces and a ripple of restrained applause from unseen corners. Security quickly hushed the murmurs, but the energy had shifted irreversibly. Arjun sat beside her, a faint nod of approval. The courtroom was no longer just a stage for procedural theatrics. It had become a crucible where raw integrity met calculated power. DeSantis's jaw tightened. His carefully constructed facade flickered, revealing a glimpse of frustration. He pressed further, but Jasmine's calm defiance held strong, each answer reinforcing her unyielding stance. Outside, the public caught every word, dissecting the exchange with fervor. Social media erupted anew, with clips of Jasmine's sharp retort circulating widely. Supporters hailed her as a voice of courage. Detractors doubled down on their accusations. Inside the chamber, the crossfire had only just begun. The room's atmosphere thickened as Ron DeSantis's voice took on a darker edge. "Congresswoman Crockett, your refusal to fully comply with this committee's directives borders on contempt. Are you aware of the consequences of such defiance?" Jasmine's gaze remained unwavering, steady as a lighthouse beam cutting through a storm. She rose slowly, commanding the room's attention. "Mr. Chairman," she began, voice clear and resolute, "contempt is a tool wielded to suppress inconvenient truths. But the true contempt lies in the silence that allows injustice to flourish." The murmurs grew louder. Some committee members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. DeSantis's face tightened, but Jasmine pressed on. She unfolded it carefully. Prepared argument, citing constitutional precedents and past rulings on legislative oversight. This committee has the power to question, but not to condemn before due process. Your threats reveal a fear of scrutiny, not a respect for justice. Arjun Mehta caught her eye, a flicker of pride evident. Jasmine's words echoed beyond the chamber, rapidly climbing trending topics and news headlines. "I do not fear contempt," she declared. "I fear complacency. A complacency that betrays the very people we were elected to serve." The room held its breath. For a moment, it was no longer a hearing, it was a trial of the nation's conscience. DeSantis' grip on the committee seemed to falter as the ideological battle intensified. Jasmine had flipped the script, turning accusations into a philosophical reckoning. Outside the chamber, the public watched, engaged, divided, but undeniably captivated. The hearing had transcended politics. It was now a profound clash of power and principle. When asked to justify her vocal opposition to the sweeping surveillance laws under scrutiny, Jasmine Crockett rose from her seat with a quiet grace that commanded the room's attention. The committee leaned in, sensing an emotional undercurrent beneath the legal arguments. "I will answer not just as a lawmaker, but as a citizen who believes in the fragile promise of liberty," she began. Her voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "Liberty is not convenience, it is disruption. It is the refusal to settle for comfort when justice demands courage." She paused, eyes scanning the chamber. James Baldwin once said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." And Frederick Douglass reminded us, "Power concedes nothing without a demand." Her words weren't a fiery indictment, but a measured call to conscience, weaving poetry into politics, philosophy into policy. The committee members shifted uneasily, some visibly moved, others resistant to the moral clarity she invoked. The cameras zoomed in as Jasmine's voice softened. "We are here not just to defend laws, but to defend the principles that hold our democracy together, even when it is inconvenient, even when it is disruptive." Across social media, snippets of her testimony were clipped and set to music, remixed into viral videos titled, "She Dismantled the Chair Without Standing Up." The public absorbed her message, some with reverence, others with frustration. But none could ignore the potency of her words. In that moment, the courtroom was no longer merely a place of legal wrangling. It had become a forum for philosophical debate, an arena where the very meaning of justice was contested aloud, and Jasmine Crockett stood at the center. Unwavering, a beacon of clarity amid the storm. The tension in the chamber was palpable as an unmarked black sedan pulled up quietly to the courthouse steps. Inside, a former NSA analyst, her face obscured beneath a hood, prepared to deliver testimony that could unravel the entire hearing, called under strict anonymity. The witness took the stand behind a privacy screen. The room fell silent, every eye fixed on the muffled voice that emerged from the guarded booth. "I was directed," she began, "to monitor Congresswoman Crockett well before this hearing was scheduled. Surveillance intensified the moment her speeches gained viral traction. She was not just under watch. She was a target." A murmur rippled through the committee. DeSantis leaned forward, eyebrows knitted in disbelief, attempting to interrupt. "Objection," Arjun Mehta countered sharply. "Under whistleblower protection, this testimony is both lawful and crucial." The witness continued, detailing covert communications within Homeland Security aimed at discrediting Jasmine and fabricating evidence to support charges. Jasmine closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the weight of confirmation she had long suspected. They wanted to make an example of her. The analyst's voice trembled slightly, but they